Did Hillary Clinton's visit to San Francisco this week set the stage for a presidential run? Also in San Francisco, Attorney General Eric Holder calls for cutting back harsh prison sentences.
We need to ensure that incarceration is used to punish, to deter, and to rehabilitate, but not merely to warehouse and to forget.
And a $1 billion plan to expand California's largest reservoir, Shasta Dam, causes a flood of controversy. Plus, the greening of Tom Steyer, a San Francisco billionaire who wants to help steer the country's energy policy.
Energy and climate are going to be the challenge for our generation. I think they're
coming up next.
Good evening, I'm Thuy Vu. Welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me for insight and analysis of news from the week are Craig Miller, KQED Science Editor, Michael Montgomery with KQED News and the Center for Investigative Reporting, and Carla Marinucci, San Francisco Chronicle Senior Political Writer. Two prominent figures came to San Francisco this week, tackling tough issues and generating national headlines. Attorney General Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton. They both addressed the annual meeting of the American Bar Association. Clinton criticized what she sees as an erosion of the Voting Rights Act, taking sharp aim at North Carolina's new voter ID law.
And that progress, that historical progress toward a more perfect union, will go backwards instead of forward.
So, Carla, we'll talk in a moment about Eric Holder, but first let's discuss Hillary Clinton. This is just the first speech in a series that she'll have in the coming months. What else is she expected to talk about? And was the San Francisco speech essentially the kickoff to her 2016 presidential run?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you looked at the buzz she got, you looked at the attention, the number of cameras that were there, there's no question that people were looking at what they thought was a presidential candidate and the start of that campaign. Addressing voting rights, an important issue to the Democratic base. She's going to be talking about America's standing in the world, trust in the world in the next month. These are big issues, and these are issues you don't just address unless you want to talk to the entire country. Looking at the interest that we saw here, look, the fundraising is already going on for Hillary Clinton. They're ready for Hillary PAC. Wow. Susie Tompkins-Buell, a major Democratic donor, is out there pushing for her.
And she's got a fundraiser coming up for her in November?
That's right. And she's going to be returning here in November, Hillary is, with Chelsea Clinton, and at an event directed at millennials. Now, those are voters really important to Barack Obama. Voting rights issues to Latinos, to African Americans. Look, she is hitting all the right buttons here. And to watch this event, it was interesting because she even, her people were looking at who was in the audience. I know Gavin Newsom mentioned he was there just to watch the speech and was called in to the backstage to meet her. Shows that she's got the figures out there and the people out there looking at who she needs to contact, I think, for a future run.
Well, clearly she's got a lot of women excited. Just the prospect of the first female president. However, women were also excited in 2008, and she lost that time to Barack Obama. Is she taking a page out of the Obama playbook this time? She's going after the millennials. She's really just trying to lay down her social media network very early.
Absolutely, and I think here's the difference. I talked to a lot of people in Silicon Valley about Hillary Clinton. About a year ago, they were saying, I don't know, she may be old news. We maybe need something different. Now they're saying, look, we're on board with her. She's just got to get the same bright young people that Obama had to run that campaign. None of the old guard, the people that failed her last time around. This has got to be a new campaign with a new group of people, and it looks like that's where she may be going.
So when and where are we going to see Bill? He's talking about new people, but there is.
This happens. Look, San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California loves Bill Clinton. He was a major factor in Obama's success. If you remember that speech he gave at the Democratic Convention, as far as I think they're concerned, he couldn't come often enough or more. I mean, this is going to be so interesting to watch. I was even at an Emily's List event today in San Francisco, and I mean, the women there were already talking about 2016. I think look, a lot can happen in politics between now and then. But if she doesn't run, it's a free-for-all on the Democratic side, because who knows, the bench is quite thin, to be honest, on the Democratic side.
Who else is there on the Democratic side?
Joe Biden, maybe Andrew Cuomo. Just talk about Martin O'Malley, governor of Maryland, who you say. That's pretty much the situation the Democrats have. Hillary is the star player.
And on the Republican side, is there anybody? The party's a mess right now.
Yeah, you're talking about Marco Rubio. You're talking about Jeb Bush. A lot of people are saying it's not too soon for another Bush to come back, even though his mother said it may be. I mean, it's going to be an interesting race all the way around. But the fact is, Hillary is already dominating this race, and the spotlight is going to be on her.
Carl, how much of a difference either way do you think her stint as Secretary of State has made? It seems like on the one hand, it's kept her in the limelight, but kind of out of the nastiest.
I think it's huge, but already you're seeing this is where the Republicans are already talking about how are they going to attack her on Benghazi. That's going to be, they're already going for that and looking at her record there. However, it's made her much more popular with Americans as a whole and given her the kind of credentials that no one else in this race has.
She's better liked now, you think?
Yeah, I absolutely think she's better liked. See that reception in San Francisco?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was the rock star reception.
And the polling shows she's just riding high.
Yeah, she's doing wonderful.
We want to talk about someone else as well, because we want to turn our attention now to Attorney General Eric Holder, who was also in San Francisco this week. He sparked much debate when he announced sweeping new changes in minimum sentencing policies. Holder directed his U.S. attorneys across the country to stop charging low-level, nonviolent drug offenders with offenses that carry severe mandatory sentences.
In 2010 alone. Incarceration has a significant role to play in our justice system. Widespread incarceration at the federal, state, and local levels is both ineffective and unsustainable.
So, Carla, let's go back to you. But, Michael, I want to invite you to join the conversation, too, because you've been covering criminal justice issues for a long time. But what Eric Holder announced, how significant is this federal shift that he's talking about?
Well, I think he opened a national conversation when he called the justice system shameful. In that studies show that black males as a whole have sentences 20% longer than white males. And what he did was direct 94 U.S. attorneys to be more flexible in their sentencing when it comes to these low-level nonviolent drug offenders. I think that's significant, but, as Michael knows, there's a lot of debate about how effective this could be. It was opening a conversation that was very, very important. A lot of people thought that was significant, especially since the prison population has grown 800% since 1980. Overcrowding is a major issue he's trying to address here.
Are there parallels? I mean, overcrowding in federal prisons, but definitely overcrowding is a huge problem in California's prisons.
No, I mean, that's
as
right.
well.
And who's channeling whom? Is Holder channeling Jerry Brown or Jerry Brown channeling Holder? And that is, they have a problem, or we have a problem as a society, and that is really overfull prisons. What Holder's saying, what the Attorney General is saying is, we have to create more flexibility in the system. There's got to be more discretion in terms of some of these cases, and that's essentially what he's doing. He's not changing any laws. He can't. Congress might be able to do that, and there's been some criticism. Some critics of his speech are saying that this should be left to Congress to take care of, not the Attorney General. But the problem here is, how do you get there? Governor Brown launched this realignment program that is diverting low-level offenders to counties. Hopefully, so that they'll be handled differently, alternatives perhaps not being locked up. In some senses, that's what Holder is trying to, I think, accomplish. That is, get people to think, how should we deal with people who might be drug addicts committing crimes to get more money for drugs, but who aren't perhaps dangerous people.
Well, Michael, I think that's a key question, is that if not hard time, then what? Because if we want to start using more alternative programs than sending them to jail, I guess the question is, well, what programs? Are they out there and ramped up?
Right. So one of the themes here is, we're in some ways, in some states, and perhaps the Attorney General is recommending that we start looking at this get tough era, these 30 years of laws and sentence enhancements. And some experts will say what's different between now and 20 years ago is we have alternatives. There's proven alternatives for low-level drug offenders. You don't need to incarcerate them. And in fact, it's cheaper. and more effective. And the recidivism rates are actually lower. We've seen that in states like Texas and Oklahoma. In fact, the federal government's sort of behind the curve, as is California. That's at least what a lot of experts say.
Well, because California passed Prop 36 recently. That's another example of how states have been taking the lead on this. And then Prop 36 basically said for the third strike to happen, it has to be for a serious crime. I'm wondering, though, with what Holder announced, is there bipartisan support in Washington for something like this?
I mean, yeah, we are seeing that. I think and Michael, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I mean, in terms of a cultural shift here, you know, it was not too long ago that Californians and across the country, people were saying, like, throw away the key, you know, 3 strikes, you're out. Now people are starting to look at the prison system and some of the injustices, which, you know, Holder called shameful, and realizing there are some huge inequities and a lot of lives being affected when you talk about throwing away the key on 20-year-old men. And we've written a number of things about it. Case Clarence Aaron, a young man, 23, who was sentenced to life without parole for the first nonviolent drug offense, a $1,500 drug deal. Now, serial killers, you know, don't spend that much time in prison oftentimes. That kind of case, I think, is what Holder's talking about.
There's going to be a continuing debate about what actually, how you define a low-level low-level offender. We didn't hear that from the Attorney General, and we didn't get a lot of details from him. We expect to hear more soon on that.
Okay, and while we wait for that, we also want to talk about another situation going on in the criminal justice system in California, and that's the hunger strike by California prisoners. It's now in its 6th week, and there doesn't seem to be a resolution in sight. Supporters of the hunger strikers have demanded changes in how prisoners are treated in solitary confinement. Advocates for the inmates say conditions are inhumane. The state's corrections chief contends the strike is controlled by violent prison gangs. Now, Michael, you've been on this program before talking about this issue. We're revisiting it today because there were developments today. There was a settlement conference in the lawsuit involving Pelican Bay. Talk about that.
Right. So we're on the 38th day of the hunger strike, where I think 98 inmates have not been eating for 38 days. That's pretty far in. It's much longer than the last hunger strike in 2011. Parallel with the hunger strike, there's this federal lawsuit focusing on Pelican Bay, focusing on conditions there, claiming that these conditions are unconstitutional. There have been settlement talks ordered by the federal judge in the case. There seems to be some progress there, perhaps not a breakthrough, but the feeling is that if there is a settlement between the inmates and their lawyers and the state on the federal lawsuit, that might get the hunger strike leaders to call off the protest.
You know, I'm wondering, some of the prisoners involved are some very bad guys. We know that. And what have they accomplished when it comes to changing public opinion on it? Has public opinion, you know, are they on? Is the public on their side? Has the needle moved at all?
I mean, very hard to win public sympathy on something like this.
There are some really bad actors among these, some of the.
We're talking rapists, murderers.
It's worth keeping in mind. So Pelican Bay, the units that are an issue here are these security housing units. They're prisons within the prison system. So men are not sentenced there. They're sent there for reasons determined by the prison system. So it's true that many of these inmates are convicted of murder, for example. They're placed in these units largely on allegations that they're gang members, prison gang members. And indeed, last week we had an indictment concerning the Mexican mafia and drug cartels going in cahoots to control trafficking in Los Angeles.
While they're in this,
one of the men in one of the indictments is one of the hunger strike leaders. There's no doubt that there are some serious allegations. On the other hand, as we've reported, there are low-level offenders, 3 striker types who've ended up in Pelican Bay for years, trapped in a sort of Kafkaesque system that they can't get out of. So you have a wide spectrum of
Michael,
offenders there.
I've got to ask you this, because you've been up there. You've been up to Pelican Bay. You know, that throughout this entire controversy, the state has been saying again and again, we don't have solitary confinement. Well, you've been there, do they?
Well, so the allegation from the side of the hunger strikers and the lawsuit that Pelican Bay really is long-term solitary confinement and that it's torture, and they throw out some international conventions supporting that. I've been there. I would never want to be locked there. Whether it constitutes solitary confinement, there's simply no consensus on that. There's no legal definition of solitary. Some of the inmates are double-celled. So they have
they are.
cellmates.
Okay.
So they're
Some.
Do they have access to the outside world?
They
TV,
don't. So the issue, they have
visits?
televisions. They do get visitors behind glass, but their everyday life, they're in their cells 22.5 hours a day. The hour and a half that they're out, they're in a concrete room essentially. So they don't really see the outside world except on this tiny
It's
television.
isolation.
I would
Essentially.
argue it's isolation. Whether it's solitary confinement, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it looks like the civil disobedience may not be the best recourse at this point. There seems to be very little public pressure to do something about it, so it may have to hinge on what happens in the Pelican Bay suit.
Correct. I think that a lot rides on this lawsuit and being settled. And in the meantime, you have some men in very vulnerable medical situations. There could be, they're vulnerable to heart attacks and all sorts of things. We haven't seen any emergencies yet, but I think we're getting into that moment when that could very much happen.
Okay, I know you'll watch it, Michael. Thank you. Moving on to something else now, a monumental $1 billion plan to expand Shasta Dam is causing concern among some Native Americans and environmental groups. The 602-foot-tall dam on the Sacramento River forms California's largest reservoir, Shasta Lake. It supplies water from Silicon Valley to San Diego. The plan supporters want to raise the dam by as much as 18.5 feet to increase storage capacity to meet the state's water needs. And Craig, why is there opposition to this, and does it threaten to derail the plan?
Not a new idea, by the way. This has been kicked around for at least a decade, going back to a state-federal joint water planning initiative of the 1990s. It's back in the news now for two reasons, really. One, they've put out the environmental impact statement for it, which is about 10,000 pages long, so I'm just assuming you've all read it. And also,
I did just last night.
Yeah, right. And also because there is growing political pressure and industrial pressure from the water agencies for more storage in California. So that's why we're even talking about this now.
Oh, okay, but I've got to ask, after our experience with the Bay Bridge, which was supposed to cost under $1 billion, and now it's at $7 billion, I think, and it took how many years? What guarantees, what is the record here on building this kind of an infrastructure project in California, or the likelihood that this would ever get done?
Well, remember, it's a federal project. It's part of the Central Valley Project, which is a big federal water project that was going back to the 1930s, actually. And Shasta is the sort of the centerpiece of that whole system. And so it ultimately would have to go to Congress, and Congress would provide money for it. But yes, the $1.2 billion or whatever is the on-paper construction price, of course. But believe it or not, of the 3 or 4 different alternatives for surface storage that they're considering, it's one of the cheaper ones.
At $1 billion?
At $1.2 billion, right.
Oh.
Proponents are saying this is a good idea because the dam's already there. We're just adding to the top of it. So it is a lot cheaper than building another dam.
Well, I've got to ask you this. You've reported on water in this state. We have a bit of a water problem, droughts, water shortages. So where is this water going to come from?
Well, that's one of the arguments that opponents are making, is that just making the dam bigger doesn't create new water by some kind of alchemy. The Bureau of Reclamation says that lake fills the capacity roughly 1 out of every 3 years. But of course, you're paying for it every year. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the bases for opposition. Also, environmentalists are not happy about potential habitat destruction because the footprint of the lake would get bigger. You put more water in the lake, and then you have the whole issue with the cultural assets that are there and the Wintu Indian tribe as well.
And what are they saying? It would possibly flood their sacred lands? Or?
Right, which of course some of that happened when they made the dam in the first place and created the lake. Now they're saying they would lose another 60 to 80 of their sacred sites if the lake got bigger. The problem is that the Wintu, unfortunately for them, are not a federally recognized tribe. They're recognized by the state, but not the federal government, and unfortunately they're dealing with a federal agency.
So they have no legal
So they're not
standing
even
here.
Considered a legitimate stakeholder, in terms of, the process, unfortunately.
So if this doesn't get done, what's the alternative? Is any other project out there? That
There
can
are
handle
other
this?
projects. There are other big engineering projects being considered. One of them is a valley that doesn't have a river going through it up north of Sacramento that they would just seal off and flood. That's called off-stream storage. And there's an idea to expand another big reservoir down in the San Joaquin Valley too. But some of the critics of this are saying, look, let's take a holistic approach to this. Rather than just pour more concrete to try to solve California's water shortage issues, let's talk about conservation. Let's talk about how we can work surface water and groundwater together to try to maximize the benefit from both, and just rather than pour more concrete.
And public hearings are happening now, and they run through, what, the end of September?
This is the time they call the public comment period. It goes about another month or so, and there'll be a series of public meetings between now and then.
And you have a story on this on KQED Radio, we want to point out. And when is that airing?
Monday morning, it's our regular Monday morning science feature segment, 6:30 and 8:30.
All right, we look forward to that.
All
Thank
right.
you, Craig. Well, continuing on the environmental front, San Francisco billionaire Tom Steyer is emerging as a formidable environmental activist and green energy advocate. He may not be a household name yet, but the former hedge fund manager was the driving force behind Proposition 39 last November. That voter-approved measure yielded millions of dollars to make schools more energy efficient. Steyer opposes the Keystone XL oil pipeline and is using his financial and political muscle to pressure the Obama administration on energy policy. Scott Schaefer spoke with Tom Steyer earlier this week.
Tom Steyer, thanks for being here.
Scott, thank you very much.
You've been spending a lot of your own money recently, tens of millions of dollars on politics, mostly candidates, ballot measures, and so on, mostly promoting green energy. Why is it so important to you?
And I think that energy and climate are going to be the challenge for our generation. I think they're going to be the measuring stick for how we do as a generation.
What can one person do in that regard?
The end is for us to have an energy system that's sustainable, that is good for job creation, that makes America the economic powerhouse that it's always been and that I hope it always will be, and which also preserves the earth in a good way.
Here in California, that's also good politics.
The fact of the matter is, California has led the nation in many ways, including environmental legislation, for decades. So if you look at the Clean Air Act, if you look at the Clean Water Act, if you look at miles per gallon regulations, they've all come from California and the nation has followed.
You call yourself a business Democrat, and yet it's really business that opposes a lot of these policies that you're promoting in terms of carbon taxes and other things that promote green energy.
There are elements of the business community that are pushing back, and those tend to be companies involved in fossil fuels, and they see their job as representing their economic interest and their shareholders, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, from a business standpoint, there are plenty of businesses that profit dramatically from new kinds of energy, from advanced thinking about energy, that are going to create many more jobs than extractive fuel industries.
One of the issues you're really focused on is the Keystone pipeline, and there's a big decision awaiting President Obama. You've personally talked with him about this. You want that project to be killed. Why is the president taking such a long time to make what to you seems like a pretty obvious, easy decision?
I think in the beginning, no one was paying much attention. And so the industry was pushing the idea that it was about energy independence and a big jobs program and a number of other things that turned out not to be true. There was kind of one side of the argument was being strongly made and the other side wasn't being made at all. And that went on for quite a long time, and then suddenly people woke up and said, whoa, this doesn't seem quite right. Let's examine the premise.
But isn't that what the president's supposed to do? I mean, he's not supposed to just pay attention to arguments out there, in public. He has advisors and people who, presumably he would be, if anyone would know that, he would.
I think that he has done a much better job in terms of energy and climate than people realize. He did it kind of quietly in the first term. He's been much more vocal about it in his second term, but he's pretty consistently pushed hard on energy and climate. And in fact, this is something that has blown up really this year, starting last year, but has really blown up this year into consciousness. Has become kind of a prime fight.
Yeah. You got involved a few weeks ago in the BART strike. Well, actually, it wasn't a strike yet. They were talking, and it was coming to loggerheads. And before the governor stepped in to avert a strike, you showed up at a BART station in solidarity with the people who clean the station at 16th and Mission. Why did you decide to get involved in that issue? What's a billionaire doing standing with the people who clean BART stations?
The person who is there are two unions involved. And I really only know about one of them, which is really the lower paid workers. And the person who's representing them is one of my is an old friend. And she said, Tom, really, you should come down. She gave me kind of what people get paid when they start, what they move up to and their benefits. Come down and spend a day in their shoes and see how hard the job is.
But there seems to be so little public support. Is there a shifting attitude toward working class people, toward unions, you think, that is playing out?
I definitely hope there's not a shift towards working class people, because these people are doing a very hard dirty job under tough circumstances, and they are by no means they're not making a ton of money and their benefits aren't outrageous. I think what people may be reacting to is there may be people in this situation who are at the high end where they feel as if people in the public sector are getting paid better than people in the private sector.
Thinking about the BART strike or any other issue facing us as a state, as a country, what would you say is the biggest failure of leadership right now?
I think the question in the United States has been, what is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish as a people and as a polity? And I think if you understand that and you can put it into terms, then all the decisions fall out of it. If you don't know what your mission is, then every decision is an individual tactical decision, and then everything is tough.
Your name has been kicked around as someone who might be interested in being governor or senator someday. If you thought you could make a difference, is that something you'd want?
I have been involved in a few things in politics, a couple propositions in California, a couple of races. When I've gotten involved, it's because I've said there's something that's not being done that I feel really strongly about, and I'm willing to go in, and if it's time-consuming, embarrassing, expensive, difficult, it's fine.
Last question really quickly. You were captain of the Yale soccer team. What did you learn from that experience?
I learned two things from that experience. One is, don't accept authority without question, because I've played for a lot of coaches, and you really have to keep a mind of your own. And the second thing I've learned is, if you want to be a good leader, you better understand what the mission is, and you better go out and make sure that the people who are behind you accept the same mission and are willing to do what it takes to win.
Tom Steyer, thanks for coming in.
Scott, thank you very much.
Yep.
Definitely someone to keep on watching. And that's all for tonight. I want to thank all of our guests for being here, Michael Montgomery, Carla Marinucci, and Craig Miller. You've got nothing else better to do on a Friday night than to come here and hang out with me, right?
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure to have you on. And you can visit us at kqed.org/thisweek for past episodes, to sign up for the newsletter and podcast, and to share your thoughts and story ideas. I'm Thuy Vu. Have a good night. Thanks for joining us.